Thank you very much for very interesting presentations. Now we'll have like around 10 minutes for some questions. You come from very different contexts and you focus on very different things in your talks. But I'm wondering, like in general, could you tell me if it's like, how is life being a whaler today in 2022? Is it a pleasant way of life, or do you have challenges? Are there many challenges? Is it worth it to keep on working as a whaler? Maybe Hallgerð, you can start.
And I think you see it in the light of the activists, or
I think in general, because you mentioned different challenges, so maybe.
I think the biggest challenge for a Faroese whaler would be the activists, the anti-whaling activists, especially because there's no education or awareness of how to treat those.
From the Faroese, you mean?
Yeah. Because they're very provocative and very aggressive, and their methods are very dirty.
And you think it affects the interest of participating also because of that?
No, so there was a question from a Swiss journalist about how it has affected Faroes, or how it has affected the whale drives and the support too. And I actually think that by the arrival of the organizations on the Faroe Islands in the 80s, there actually came a pushback from the Faroe Islands. So the support to Grindadrap grew. That's my own assumption. I think the pressure created a contra pressure, like there was a huge pushback.
So there are two sides to it. It's a problem, but it's also maybe a motivation or something.
Yes, it has caused the motivation, at least at that point.
Yeah.
We don't know how it will look in the future.
Yeah. And what is the situation in Norway like? How is it to be a whaler in Norway today?
As I said previously in the presentation, I'm very proud of being a whaler and to take part of the culture. And it has been there for generations. And it's the lack in demand that is the biggest problem for us today. Yeah.
But daily life, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about Greenland?
Can you repeat the questions again?
Yeah, how is it to be a whaler in today's society in 2022? Is it a good life? Is it a pleasant life? Or how is the challenges? Are there many challenges to this work?
I will say that being a hunter is the best that you can have. It's always exciting to think about if we are having, if we're going to catch what we are going to catch today. And it's also very exciting that when we ever go to a hunting place to see if the animal is there or not. And the things that are being said globally regarding the meat, I don't want to have people from other places telling me that the meat is dangerous. I want to eat what I want, and this is part of my culture.
Yeah, thank you. And the next question is more like regarding the topic of this session about the future, the youth generation. And maybe we can start with Åke. How is it in your village? Are there many youths engaged in the practice of seal and whale hunting? What is like the average age of people participating?
Participating in what?
In the whale hunt or the seal hunt?
Tässä kun akkanitluunnaau pinnattut tässä utoqqarsua taqappuut meeraalluni pinnaattuunnaalluni utoqqanngortut.
We are only 11 hunters, and among us there are very old ones that have been hunting since they were little.
Tässä meditseqartuannarpu massakku inuissuttu taqappuulaamma.
But there are also younger ones too.
Ila puigorukku anamma aparilai. Okei. Tässä massakkut pinnaattu toqqartau sinnertuikoqarpu.
The old one is over 70,
Tässä naminersnaarnarnasamtungaan pinnaattuugo.
and they hunt until they cannot anymore.
Perasnaangila
They cannot let go the excitement.
uangam taamaa pasippunga.
This also applies to me.
But you have enough youth so you can pass on the knowledge. You're thinking a lot about that.
Tässä piniagasassiingittut kitsersorneqariartuarput taannassiunissamu qaatiginissa ajornarpoq takorluujuminaarpoq
The quotas are being slowly implemented, so it's hard to see the future.
Tässä nunatsinippingit neqipingitorsnaangisa rigatsiut tas piniartoqartuannassaap ingitsuugan.
There will definitely be always hunters in the futures because we cannot live without meat in Greenland.
And you really like your whale and seal meat.
Tässä unnarisuuhussuuarput.
Very.
And what is the situation in Norway, Bjarne? The same questions.
Yeah.
What about the use and the practice of whaling?
Yeah, it's there are a lot of older guys on the boats, so there are not so many of us from the young generation, and that's because of it's not so people don't find it attractive enough to start whaling. So and that's a big problem in Norway. Yeah.
And are you doing something actively, like to inspire other young people to
Yeah,
engage?
of course, but it's a profession, and people, it's a business, and there is money in it. So you have 4 or 5 crew members, and everyone is want to make money. So you fish or you do the business that makes most money, mostly. But I think nothing can beat the excitement from whaling, and that's also why many people, they hunt year after year after year, because they love it. Yeah. And the older generation, they are really good in Norway to help us, the younger, because they have a lot of competence and knowledge about everything, about whaling and animals and weather situations and everything, and they are very nice they talk about everything. There is no secrets between the whalers.
And do you and your family, and maybe like the youth of your village, do they eat a lot of whale, or is it mostly for selling, or how does it work?
Oh, we eat a lot of whale, yeah. Especially in my family. We have access to whale meat, so, but that's, now people in Norway have access to whale meat, they just don't, yeah. But in my family, we have 3, 4, 5 times a month, at least.
And how do you eat the whale?
We do everything. We can make a stew, or we make meatballs, or we can just fry it. Yeah. So there are, endless possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you, Aldous? You talked a bit about it, but how is the situation now in the north, for example, of the Faroe Islands? Do you see many youths participating, or what is the average age?
I think it depends on who you say are young people or younger generation. I think there's not a lot of teenagers participating, but younger adults, yes.
So
and
like
they're
20s,
very
30s.
active, I would say, very active, very eager to learn, to participate in the whole process, and to make sure every phase is followed up.
And is it mostly people that are like grown up with it, or do you see maybe other also joining that?
Both.
Yeah, both.
We also have foreigners who have moved into the Faroe Islands who are very active
Yeah.
in whale drives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about you and your family? How often do you eat meat or whale meat?
Whale meat, so as a dinner, I would say every other month, while the delicacy of the dried whale meat is a more common thing. Like, I think
So the first
most
one
people,
is,
they eat it if it's served because it tastes good.
So you eat it traditionally like the boiled beef of whale, like.
So for me personally, that is not my favorite dish.
No.
The boiled, fisk kókagrind is maybe something we would serve the day after grindadrap, but most of our meat is prepared for dried whale meat or for whale steaks. Up until now, at least. Maybe there's a new recipe coming up, but that's what we do. So I like salted, I like the boiled, but I don't eat the boiled blubber, for example. I like I'm more, not the 100 years old recipes, but more moving towards the future, I think.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
And can I mention like a national the national radio did a survey last week.
Oh yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah.
And that was like where I was surprised about the younger generation, because what surprised me was that the group of people who are 18 to 29 years old, there are only 13% who do not eat grind. And 87% of them also say that we should continue whaling, and that is higher than the average of 84 for the whole group, all age groups. And that was a survey of 500 participants.
That's very interesting, like when you think about the other presentations, that we need people to eat more whale meat, because maybe we don't have that issue in the Faroe Islands, that we're eating quite a lot of it. So maybe it doesn't make any sense to ask you how we could inspire the youth to eat more whale. But maybe in Norway, what are your suggestions if we need to include more youth? What could we do? Both in the whaling, but also in the eating. What do you think is a suggestion?
Start in young age I have small kids myself, and they love whale meat. So start in the kindergarten and introduce them for whale meat, and make them eat it and bring it home and tell them how good it was. Or there are so many ways you can do it. In Norway, we have something called Taco Friday, and it's very popular in Norway. And try to take out the meat you normally use and use whale instead. It's much better, I think.
It's also maybe what Therese was on, with the quality meat, so combining it with other things, salads and different things, making it more actual and combined diet. Yeah. And what about Åke in Greenland? Are you thinking about the ways you could make people, the youth people, maybe engage more in the practice of whale hunting? I'm not sure what the case is in your village, but have you thought about that?
Tässä ukkiut nyt on fiisikun kiviautte tämän pinjattut amortasoruussuuppu.
If we look back to the 80s, there are a lot of hunters back then.
Tämän puis amia akisoruussuu.
And back then, the seal skin was much more expensive.
Tavadu tässäni narua uanga inungikkallarama tassa inungurivikkama tassa akerliusoqarnikuusmagunarpu puusi amiini eqquseqqusaayunnaarnita ium.
Right before I was born, there was a ban. There was a ban from the EU regarding the sealskin.
Tassa taman amattaroqa mas sukkasuumapparnikuupput.
So the value or the costs, the price of the whale sealskin fell drastically back then.
2005 piniartunguppuan suttaniniku-qartungassuli piniartutaamatu amuttattusaataamaarinnarput.
I became a hunter when I was 17 in 2005, and the numbers of the hunters has stayed the same.
Isianni kittilersukkattaawa ilaa piniarqusaayunnaartinneqarpata issuortu allaat tas piniartu aama pingit nalungilaar pingitsuungiivistut aama ikiliaqaqqissasu.
And the more we implement quotas, I believe that the number of the hunters will decline.
Tässä
Are you expecting that to happen?
tässä kittilersukkat tässä una annerpaamua qilaluaqqarnerta isertistutigisarparput.
So the restrictions, as an example, we get the most income from the narwhal.
Taavalu tassani qartuniaama uavut sanjatsuut imat nippeqaaluartuta una piniagassaq nungulingila kisianni ukku biologit allat imat uqalupput nungulerput.
We tried to explain them that the numbers of the narwhals are not declining, but other scientists and biologists says otherwise.
Wow, isigisau allaavialu tass ullutamaasaattartarpuun isigisau allaavialu piniagassat suullunni suli matnaatseqanginnugukkiartortun nunanguan.
It does not the same as we see every day. In fact, we see the opposite, where there seem to be more of them.
So there's like a conflict or like an issue with. Okay, yeah. Can I have the last question or yeah? So I close now. Okay, yeah. Sorry, it was very interesting, and we have to close now because our boss going also. But if you have, yeah. The closing session, yeah, okay. But thank you very much. And if you want to ask them some questions, you're welcome to find them also. Thank you very much. Huh? Oh, I got you.
Yeah, I think I'll just use this mic. Thank you very much, Sunniva, and the presenters in the final session. I'm sorry to have to break it up. We do have the intention to just wrap up the conference now that we're finished. We've come to the end of all our sessions. So could I please ask all the moderators to join me up here in the middle? I think you should all have headphones on now. Yeah. We're a little bit behind schedule. According to the... We'll stand up here at the table. According to the schedule, there's a bus leaving for those who are going on the excursion. There's a bus leaving at, well, it was supposed to be 12:15, but I'm told that it can be delayed for 10 minutes or so, just to give us a few more minutes just to wrap up. I think the final session and the final discussion we just heard was, in fact, in itself a very good way to end the conference, because I think the focus is on the future, and that's certainly how we wanted to conclude the proceedings. But what I've asked the moderators to do is to just recap, not We don't want to present a summary of the conference. We don't want to come to any kind of major conclusions necessarily, but I think we would like to try and pull out some of the main points from the different sessions that we've heard over the last day and a half. So I thought I might just begin myself. We had the introductory session, and I think that was a good opportunity for us to put the whole discussion about marine mammal hunting and marine mammals as sustainable food resources into the much broader international context. And I think the information we received about FAO's ambitions on blue transformation and the potential to get much more out of our marine resources, more efficient resources, more climate-friendly resources, is certainly something that's very relevant for the discussion on marine mammals. The challenge being for us to bring those ambitions with respect to marine mammals into the international discussions more directly. And how do we go about doing that? I'll just leave that as a question, but I think one of the main points I felt that was important from that particular session was the message that local voices should be heard more clearly in global discussions. So Jon, over to you.
Yes.
Oh, you have your...
Okay, I hope that you can hear me. Rather than recapping the discussion that was in the session on the sustainability, climate, the economies and all that, rather than recapping, I would like to for us to think about the overall topics that we've heard for the last 2 days or day and a half. And there are some recurring themes that we are hearing. And the recurring themes are, of course, first of all, sustainability. And when we think of sustainability and climate, which was part of the session that I was moderating, then it is really the issue, of how does the sustainability of utilizing the resource contribute to addressing some of the climate challenges. And if we have a sustainable resource, we are also reducing the cost of going out to catch that resource. First of all, we are reducing the cost of, for example, utilization of fuel. It becomes easier to go out and catch, whether it's the marine mammal resources or whether it's the fish that we are catching. It becomes easier, it becomes more cost effective. We are using less fuel and it becomes more sustainable. So maintaining the sustainability of the resource is essential also in this climate discussion. Then we had discussion on the cultural issues, and I think that has been a recurring theme where we talk about local and the conflict between local and the global culture. So these are some of the issues. But the last, what I would like you to think about, where do we take this discussion from now on? What are the themes that we need to focus on in the next conference or the next session that we have? Thank you.
Thanks, Jon. Thanks. And Genevieve?
Yeah, we in my session on the nutrition and food safety, we have seen that the marine mammal had a lot of potential as a product, both for food and for other products. But there was risk in using marine mammal as food resources, but there was also benefits, and the benefits goes very much behind food provisioning and health benefits. They incorporated the culture, identity, and the transgenerational transfer of knowledge, and the fact of being able to save the knowledge or safeguard the knowledge will make you able to access a resource, because if the hunting stops now, then this will not be available in 50 years, for example. And we have seen there's also a physical activity, much more than going and buying your food in a store. And we have seen that this risk that exists and these benefits, they have to be weighed all together, and to also weigh compared with the alternative food resource you could have. So it's a very complex things, and to try to see what is the best things to eat, and it's not easy, it's not black and white. And one thing who became important, especially with Gerd's presentation, is that what is important is that people are informed of the risk and the benefits, the global risk and the global benefits, and can then make their own choice. And they are aware and well informed.
Thanks. Ole?
Yeah, we had the session called From Sea to Plate, and it was about how to communicate towards the market and towards the stakeholders. And we had examples from seal campaigning in Canada and whaling quality standards in Norway, and some interesting insights in how they do in Japan. And then from Greenland we had this about how to engage young people in local food. And through the session and after the session, we had some discussion and some ideas, and also in the session we pointed out that communication is around future. I mean, of course you can use history and tradition as value, but you need to target the market where it is. And the marketing campaign and quality campaign from Canada and Norway showed that somehow maybe a new era is starting. Somehow maybe the trend of Arctic can be used for something. But as one of the ideas was behind after the session, that wow, maybe if we corroborated a little bit more around meaning how can we get better access to communicate to the market. It's also about maybe even finding out, do we have the same problems? Do we have the same challenges? And how can we solve them? Maybe we can work a lot more cross borders, and by that maybe we can also use the future value, filling in what is the value in the word Arctic. So that, remember, don't just talk Canadian, don't just talk Norwegian, don't just talk Greenlandic, but talk something that makes us heard out there, because we have one voice, the Arctic voice. So I think corroboration from all participants here in NAMMCO, cross borders, cross business lines and so on, using the same value in the word Arctic could be something to take from here.
Thanks. Thanks, Ole. And Sunniva, no, we've just had your session,
Yeah.
but if you have anything to add, also from your own point of view, in your own work.
Yeah, we just finished, so I'm very sad that we couldn't end a very good discussion. I think many of the points were reflected in our session, but mostly, I think in the session, it was very clear how important it is to support the local communities. Because, of course, we can have this Arctic Council thing and collaborations, but when it comes to it, maybe the local contexts are very different. Like when you talk market, what is a market in Greenland and what's the market in the Faroe Islands and Norway? So that I think is a very important part of the discussion. And also what Åke mentioned shortly before we ended about the scientist approach and then the local indigenous approach. There can be sometimes conflicts. So I think it's very important to include that part and always include the whalers in the process of legislation or promotion of, or like finding markets. Yeah. But there are many good things I think to discuss about. We could talk for hours.
Thanks for that, and I agree. I mean, we could continue this for hours, and unfortunately, we do actually have to stop now. The bus is waiting. I'd just like to end by thanking, first of all, our wonderful moderators for their fantastic work in helping me guide us through the program, and not least, of course, all the presenters and speakers, which I think we've had a wonderful array of presentations and views, and also very good discussions. So thanks also to our audience for engaging so actively. I'd also just like to take this opportunity to thank the organising committee, or the organisers, which is first and foremost the NAMMCO Secretariat, for all their hard work, and of course the organisers here locally in the Faroes. It's really been a question of two main events, the conference itself with the programs of presentations, but not least the main event this evening, the presentation of the creations by the chefs, the food court, which I'm sure you're all looking forward to. And so I think it's important to recognise the effort that's been required behind all that to actually organise 2 big events to coincide with each other. So I think they should have our great appreciation, as should indeed the technicians here in the Nordic House. We've had streaming for the proceedings, but also not least our guys up the top and down the bottom here who've been really coping very well with what's in fact been quite a hybrid conference with so many online presentations, some people live online, microphones changing backwards and forwards. So I think it's all been done very, very well and smoothly and professionally. So thank you very much for that. So yeah, I think that's where we end. I can just say, on practically speaking, the bus is outside. As I said, there are apparently lunch packages available for everybody who's going on the tour to Klaksvik. So I think they'll be somewhere out there to pick up on your way out. And the bus will leave at the latest 12:25 sharp. If you're not on the bus at 12:25, you won't be going to Klaksvik. So thank you very much, and enjoy this evening and this afternoon.